You are audible.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Vikramendra. It is always a pleasure to be introduced by our student, and I know Dr. Vikramendra very, very closely, and I know his hard work and, his hard work and patience, which has given him rightly a place in Delhi School of Economics. Now, my topic is social aspects of COVID-19. And I would like to start by recent address to the nation by our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and he said that people are careless. You know, this is a very, very important statement made by Prime Minister. People are careless in their behavior. Now, when people are careless in their behavior, what he's trying to convey is that people are not taking care of the precautions which are needed. And we all know, anywhere that you are, I'm able to see what is happening in Delhi. People are really very, very careless. And this must be true of other places also. Whatever visuals that are coming to us, we know that people are careless. People are careless with respect to wearing of masks, which is very, very crucial. People are careless with respect to washing of their hand or sanitizing themselves, which is another very, very crucial aspect. And people are also careless for maintaining distance between themselves and others. Now, what is the reason? What is the reason? And this is the question that Prime Minister has raised. Now, who can answer this question? Like, can this question be answered by the director of All India Institute of Medical Sciences? Why people are behaving the way they are behaving? Why people are not wearing masks, even if it is available to them? Why people are not able to maintain distance in spite of knowing that there is no cure for COVID-19? Now, I think answer to this question lies not with the clinical doctors, but the answer lies with the social doctors. And who are these social doctors? The social doctors are social anthropologists. Social doctors are sociologists. Social doctors are social psychologists. Social doctors are people who are specializing in communications. And social doctors, to my mind, are also people who are working in the field of public health. So, the social doctors are the right people to understand why people are behaving the way they are behaving. Now, as a student of social anthropology, I think Indians behave differently than others. Indians behave differently than the Japanese, Indians behave differently than the Americans, Indians behave differently than the Europeans. Now, I'm not saying that all Indians are following the same behavior. Of course, India is a very, very diverse country, and we have diverse culture, we have diversity in people's behavior. But overall, now if I have to, now we are talking of behavior of Indians that Prime Minister, our Honorable Prime Minister talked about. Overall, if you look at, and my own analysis about it, I'd like to just briefly present it to you. You may accept it, you may not accept it. Now, there is something called private self. Then I would like to further say there is something called public self. Private self is our own, our own self. How do we look at ourselves? And public self is how we present ourselves in the public sphere. Now, in Indian context, I'm of the opinion that public selves need to be bifurcated into two. One is social self, and I think the other self that we have to, in Indian context, that we have to identify is the civic self. So one, as a member of society, as a social person, that is social self is what we behave among the known people. How do we behave among the people that we know? That I would like to categorize as social self. And the civic self, to my mind, would be how do we behave among the unknowns, people that we don't know. And I would like to call that as civic self. In Indian context, I think this is very important. Now, Indians are very, very responsive as far as the social self is concerned. We go and we are a social animal. I will tell you how we are a social animal and how we are gregarious. But when it comes to civic self, when it comes to behaving among people that we do not know, we are highly unresponsive. And I'm saying this not just in a whimsical way, but I have done rigorous studies for at least 7 years understanding human behavior in public places. And on the basis of my 7-year research, I came to this conclusion that in Indian context, there is a need to differentiate between social self and civic self. Now, social self is very powerful in India. Indians are basically social persons. And therefore, if I compare Indians with Americans or Europeans or Occidental, Oriental kind of a thing, if I try to do, then we know that in India, nobody wants to be identified by the first name. You go to America, you will be always identified by your first name. You will never be identified by your surname. But in India, we want to be called as Sharma ji, Gupta ji, Verma ji, Chadda Sahab. We want to be called by our group. So we have a group identity. And therefore, you go to America, you will be known by your first name. Nobody will call Trump, they will call Donald Trump. In India, we call Donald. Or maybe Donald will also be nicknamed. That is how individuals are given importance. Now, in Indian context, one of the very important things that we must understand, there is nothing like privacy. We do not have concept of privacy. We do not have concept of appointments. We never meet people by appointment. In Indian context, you will be knowing that the term for guest is called Atithi. Atithi matlab means one who comes unannounced. And it is very common in India that we may be going to somebody's house unannounced and say that I was just passing by, so I thought I should meet you. So we don't meet people. Generally, by our culture, we don't try to meet people by appointment because we do not have this concept of privacy. Now, let us see the crowding behavior, social distance. Why Indians are not maintaining social distance, why they are crowding. And we have seen it right from the day lockdown was announced. We saw people running around, crowding around for essential commodities. And then after we have seen people are not maintaining this social distance. They are not maintaining social distance. Now, this is very true again. Now, let us compare the queue behavior, line lagana, queue behavior. Now, suppose you are, and we are all accustomed to queues. Suppose you are in the queue for taking a railway ticket. Now, there is a queue of, say, 40 people, 50 people lined up to take that railway ticket. And suddenly, new window opens. What will Indians do? They will run there, and whosoever is near would go there. That is how we behave in the queue. We'll crowd, we will not maintain any distance. But suppose you go to England, and the same situation happens in England, that there is a queue, and people are waiting for the tickets to be, for their tickets. And suddenly a new person comes. Now there, this rush will not be there. After 5-6 people, the queue will systematically move to the next window. And there won't be any rushing around. So what I'm trying to say is that there is something in our behavior. And I think social scientists, like sociologists, social anthropologists, psychologists, they have a very, very important role to play in understanding the nuances of these behaviors. I'm not saying that the whole India may be behaving in the same manner. Of course, there may be variations in how people are responding. But we know that in spite of repeated announcement, in spite of repeated messages that are coming from all and mighty every day in all forms of communication, people are not taking things seriously. Now, why Indians do not take things seriously, even if it amounts to their life? And I think in Indian context, this concept of karma is also very important. We must understand why do people take known risks in Indian context. And I think we take more risks than perhaps other communities of the world. And the reason for that, to my mind, is again at the back of our mind. We think that it may not affect us. I may not be affected, but if it is in my destiny, then nobody can save me. That's the kind of attitude, that's the kind of behavior that many Indians, they believe in. And that is another very, very serious, I think, very, very serious pitfall as far as the management of COVID in Indian context is concerned. I think ultimately I would like to say that COVID-19 is a problem, is a pandemic which has no solution as far as the medical science is concerned. But it has all the solutions as well as the social sciences are concerned. So social sciences have a great responsibility in understanding the human behavior with respect to coronavirus threadbare. We are the ones who have an understanding of why people behave the way they are behaving. We are the people who can also come up with the strategies of how behavior change can take place. What kind of a communication should we have? How do we change the behavior? How do you make sure that the preventive measures, which are so crucial to this COVID management, are in proper place? So far as we have moved, we are only mostly we are playing with our luck. And as a result, the number of cases of COVID are increasing day by day. I think it is the time, or the time has come, when social sciences, through forums like this is a great forum that you have you have created, and Sahuji Maharaj University has created. This is a great forum, and this great forum should deliver on the nuances, on the issues of social behavior pertaining to the COVID-19 and how this behavior can be corrected, how we can reach the people. Just saying that you maintain distance, nobody is going to listen. We know that. We know that mere slogans, mere posters, mere saying would affect only a very, very small percentage of people. But if you want to make effective communication, you have to thoroughly understand the cause of the behavior, and then only you can, what we say, you can initiate behavior change communication with respect to HIV/AIDS, which also, to my mind, is similar to the challenge that we are facing with COVID-19, because there is again no confirmed cure for HIV as well. Now, HIV has been contained in India with a rigorous social science intervention, with a rigorous studies done by sociologists, anthropologists, and other social scientists, communication specialists, in understanding human behavior, and then systematically initiating behavior change communication, and then changing the behavior of people. Behavior of people can be changed, habits can be changed, and the way people behave, the way people conduct themselves can be changed. Now people behave in civic, I'm talking of civic context. People behave with respect to the context. And a very good example that I can cite in Delhi is that the commuters who are traveling by DTC bus are very different than the commuters who are traveling by Delhi Metro. Now, when people are traveling by Delhi Metro, they behave in a very different manner. But the same people, when they ride DTC bus, their behavior changes. So therefore, what I'm trying to say, they know that in DTC bus, this behavior is allowed. So you can peel peanuts and throw them around in the floor of the bus. But they know that this is not allowed in Delhi Metro. And therefore, the same person may not be behaving in the same manner in Delhi Metro vis-a-vis vis-a-vis DTC bus. So what I'm trying to say ultimately is that this COVID-19, of course, is a very big threat. But I think for social scientists, this is a great opportunity to go through our theories, to go through our methods, to go through our literature, and we must try to contribute to this great threat that not only the India is facing, but I think is faced by the whole humanities. Now we are not able to perhaps meet physically, and we are meeting digitally. But even if we are meeting digitally, nobody prevents us from doing serious research. And I've been telling that this is the time when we must also change the way social scientists are doing their research. And I would like to introduce to you a new concept that I have been talking about, that we must have smart methodology. Now, smart methodology is methodology, social science data collection through a smartphone. So you can have a smart questionnaire, you can have a smart interview, you can have a smart ethnography. So this is a smartphone, which is a wonderful technological innovation, should be incorporated in our day-to-day researches. And with the help of smartphone, we should be able to feel the pulse of the society, the pulse of the people, and contribute our might in whatever little manner that we can contribute to the nation, to strengthening the prevention of COVID-19. So with these words, I would like to thank the organizers that they gave me great opportunity to address such a illustrious gathering of intellectuals or social scientists, and I'm deeply grateful to all of you for patiently listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your experiential address. Sir has broadly covered 3 aspects, if I can conceptualize in a fraction of minutes. He has made out a distinction of Indians' response, and he has created a distinction between our civic sense or civic self and our social sense and social self. The second aspect which he has enumerated, and rightly so, which we all have seen in our life, that we have a scant regard for privacy. So our concept of visiting someone's home or our notion of interacting with individuals lacks in it. So this happens over the period of time when the society evolves. If I can speak in terms of jurisprudence, in 50s it was unheard of that the right to privacy would be recognized as a part of personal liberty. But over the period of time, when we reached in 2017 in Puttaswamy, the larger bench of Supreme Court conceived, given a new shape, but notwithstanding the same, that is still a nebulous expression for us. So over the period of time, we would give precise meaning attached to that. The third important aspect to which Professor Joshi has indicated is that the behavioral pattern of Indians is determined by the ingrained values. So when he created an apparent distinction between an individual who work in a particular manner, a contextual stimulus response behavioral pattern, then all these things determines how we behave in a particular circumstances. We are indeed very grateful and beholden to you, sir, for your experiential remarks. I would move on to our next speaker.
अनुराग जी, एक बात सूचना है, आदरणीय प्रोफेसर पीसी जोशी सर की मीटिंग है, जिसकी वजह से सर को जाना होगा, तो आप सर को थैंक्स भी कर दीजिए अगर कोई मतलब एक आध क्वेश्चन अगर कोई सर की अनुमति हो, अगर कोई कुछ पूछना चाहता हो, क्योंकि सर को जाना जरूरी है, तो इसके लिए सर ने पहले ही अवगत कराया।
In that sense, I can just look at the question Q&A session if there are any questions. I do not find any question. Probably
yeah, I am Professor Vishwajit Ghosh. Can I ask Professor Joshi a question?
Please, sir, please.
Yeah, Professor Joshi, wonderful lecture that you have brought in the arena where Indians are not behaving. Fine, I do agree with you. My question is, during pandemic, we are often asking our scholars to do a kind of quasi sort of observation or a partial sort of observation. do you think that any kind of interview using mobile phones, using internet, they are viable so far as serious anthropological in-depth data is concerned? Okay.
Well, Professor Vishwajit, thank you very much for your very good question. And this question, of course, is in the mind of all of us. I think all of us are grappling with these questions. And of course, I think as far as anthropology is concerned, we have what is called, what I propose is that we have to switch over to, face a situation to smart ethnography. Now, a smart ethnography, of course, will not be, it will be based on looking at the society, you'll be, and in ethnography, merely looking at society, merely talking to people is not sufficient. You have to also experience the reality, and that's a big challenge. But I think to some extent, if you are familiar with the people, then you can also, to some extent, experience it. I would never say that the smart ethnography will 100% replace the traditional ethnography where the ethnographer is present in the situation, or a smartphone-based interview will replace the interview that is done when the person is there. Because when you are physically there, when you are physically talking to somebody for interview, apart from verbal behavior, I think 80% of the behavior that gives you clue about what is happening, what is the response and all, is non-verbal behavior. So non-verbal behavior will be non-verbal behavior, that is 360-degree non-verbal behavior. Ethnography, smart ethnography cannot give you 360-degree kind of view of the situation. It can give you only a partial view of the situation. Therefore, in the strict sense of term, smart methodology will not be a 100% replacement of the traditional methodologies, but I'm very, very confident that it will be at least 80% replacement. And 80% replacement, as far as the method is concerned, is not a small one. Because in using smart methods, in using digital methods, there are many hardships that you are avoiding. You are not traveling there, you are not making arrangement for staying there. So that kind of a compromise you have to maintain. I think as social scientists, more than anyone else, we are more adaptable. We can more easily adapt to new situations. And this is a challenge that we are facing. So we must adapt to these situations. So Professor Vishwajit, I would say that it's a challenge. Now it depends upon us how intelligently we can create this hardship to an opportunity for us. Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you.
There is another question by Dr. Rakesh Thakur. He is an associate professor, postgraduate Government College, Sector 11, Chandigarh. His question is, stigma and discrimination are as old as human existence. Disease and social structure mutate in their form and content. For social scientists, what is more important? A, to understand the intra-dynamics between social structure and pandemic, or look at the ameliorative measure. So your comments are expected, sir. This is a beautiful question here.
You see, both are related to each other. Both are related to each other. Now, if you don't understand the nuances, how would you implement how would you initiate any change or intervention? So for effective intervention, it is important that you thoroughly understand the nuances of a particular behavior. This is one. Secondly, you very well talked about stigma. You very well talked about discrimination. These are the problems which are existing in our society. These are the problems which are part and parcel of Indian society. These are the problems that are part and parcel of other societies as well. You see, when Corona started, the Chinese started blaming Africans. They started bashing Africans. They thought Africans are the one who have brought Corona to their country. Similarly, the people of Thailand, they started blaming Europeans. So in India also, we started blaming some Tablighi Jamaat at one point of time. So these are the kind of, discriminations that we try to initiate. Now these discriminations and stigma, they all come because of the fear. Because of the fear. There was a time when leprosy used to be a very dreaded disease, and so was tuberculosis. because there was a fear. So people would never marry their daughters in a families where anyone in the 3 generation would have leprosy or tuberculosis. We know that both these conditions are infectious conditions and they can be controlled by antibiotics. But there was a fear, and this fear was linked to stigma, this fear was linked to discrimination. So what is important? If we want to challenge the stigma, I must understand and I must make strategies so that the fear is nullified. Once the fear is nullified, then I think I can work on stigma. Just by saying, don't discriminate, don't have stigma, nobody is going to listen to unless we go to deeper behavioral factors which are giving rise to stigma or discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. There is an